The genesis of this significant development was remarkably understated, unfolding with such a profound lack of fanfare that, for an extended period, it largely escaped the attention of nearly everyone. There was no grand palace announcement to herald the change, no meticulously crafted press release disseminated to eager journalists, nor any official photograph thoughtfully distributed for media consumption. Instead, the alteration manifested as merely a subtle, almost imperceptible shift, a gradual modification in established routines, and a pivotal decision discreetly reached within the confines of private chambers. This choice, shrouded in secrecy, was destined to send profound ripples throughout the entirety of the royal family, influencing dynamics in ways that very few individuals could have possibly foreseen. Prince William, a figure consistently recognized for his exceptionally cautious approach to matters of state and his profound, unwavering reverence for long-standing royal tradition, undertook a private initiative. Those intimately familiar with the inner workings of the royal household have characterized this move as profoundly personal in its essence, heavily laden with emotional significance, and, in its ultimate manifestation, utterly impossible for anyone to disregard. Consequently, when the news of this action finally made its way to Prince Harry and Meghan, their immediate response was reportedly one of absolute and undeniable shock, a reaction that conveyed the sheer unexpectedness of the situation. For an extended period stretching across many years, the intricate and delicate relationship existing between the two brothers has been consistently depicted as fraught with tension, remarkably complicated, and notably characterized more by prolonged periods of silence than by overt, dramatic confrontations. Following the significant decision by Prince Harry and Meghan to formally step back from their official royal duties and subsequently relocate their lives to the distant shores of California, a vast ocean quite literally came to separate them, both geographically and symbolically, from the remaining members of the royal family. On a public platform, carefully curated statements were issued, emphasizing sentiments of love, mutual understanding, and earnest good wishes for each other's futures. Yet, in stark contrast, sources with intimate access to the family's private affairs have ceaselessly alluded to deep-seated, unresolved tensions, persistent feelings of profound betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of loss that, to this very day, neither brother has managed to fully or adequately articulate in words. It was against this deeply complex and emotionally charged backdrop that Prince William's recent actions assumed a far greater significance and weight than might have been readily apparent upon a superficial examination. Those individuals intimately acquainted with the intricacies of the royal situation have indicated that this momentous decision was fundamentally rooted in Prince William's steadily intensifying focus upon his eventual and inevitable future role as the reigning king. In his capacity as Prince of Wales, he has, with increasing frequency, assumed a multitude of weighty responsibilities that were once primarily shouldered by his father, King Charles. Inseparable from this burgeoning workload is a significantly sharper and more acute awareness of his enduring legacy. Prince William has consistently been portrayed as an individual who possesses a remarkable capacity for long-term strategic thinking, a person who meticulously evaluates decisions not merely by their immediate impact in the present day, but, crucially, by how they will be perceived and judged many decades into the future. During the course of recent months, this particular mindset, characterized by foresight and strategic consideration, appears to have undergone a noticeable intensification. Close confidants and personal friends have observed that Prince William has become notably more introspective in his thoughts, exhibiting a heightened sense of protectiveness towards his immediate family unit, and demonstrating an even greater, unyielding determination to meticulously define a clear and unambiguous path forward for himself and for the monarchy. This resolute pursuit of clarity holds true even if such a path necessitates the quiet, yet firm, closure of certain long-standing doors and avenues. The specific move undertaken by Prince William was, in its very essence, profoundly symbolic, laden with unspoken meaning. He consciously chose to undertake a comprehensive reorganization of pivotal aspects pertaining to his private life and his innermost circle of trusted advisors and associates. This deliberate restructuring aimed at meticulously streamlining and redefining precisely who possessed direct access to him, who was entrusted with offering counsel and guidance, and who maintained connections to his most personal and private affairs. Critically, this strategic realignment was not primarily concerned with alterations to public titles or the reallocation of official patronages. Rather, its fundamental core revolved around the paramount importance of trust and fidelity. Consequently, long-serving and dedicated aides found themselves reassigned to new roles. Certain informal yet significant family-linked channels of communication were reportedly scaled back or entirely diminished, and a number of specific informal traditions that had, for a considerable time, served to connect the two brothers were deliberately permitted to gently fade into obsolescence. For Prince William, this was emphatically not conceived as an act of aggression or hostility, but rather as a necessary and calculated act of essential self-preservation. He held a steadfast conviction that he was undertaking precisely what was indispensable to safeguard the well-being and privacy of his beloved wife, his cherished children, and, ultimately, the enduring stability and future prosperity of the monarchy which he is destined one day to lead. What rendered this entire situation exceptionally sensitive and fraught with complexity was the deep and intricate emotional history that has always existed between Prince William and Prince Harry. Having spent their formative years maturing under the relentless glare of immense public attention and scrutiny, the two brothers developed an intense reliance upon one another, particularly in the profound aftermath of the tragic death of their beloved mother. That unique and powerful bond, forged inextricably in the crucible of shared grief and sorrow, was, at one point, widely considered to be utterly unbreakable and impervious to any strain. However, the inexorable march of adulthood, the profound commitments of marriage, and the emergence of vastly divergent visions for their respective lives ultimately served to pull them in distinctly opposite and increasingly separate directions. Prince Harry's candid openness regarding his personal struggles, coupled with Meghan's pronounced willingness to openly challenge and question long-established royal norms and expectations, collectively generated a compelling narrative that frequently positioned Prince William in an inherently uncomfortable and challenging predicament. He consistently found himself caught in a delicate and often agonizing balancing act, torn between his deep-seated personal loyalty to his brother and his unwavering paramount duty to the ancient and revered institution of the monarchy itself. Over the passage of time, the immense strain of maintaining that precarious balance inexorably began to extract a heavy and noticeable toll upon him. When Harry and Meghan reportedly became aware of William's intensely personal and private decision, the information did not arrive through the warmth of a heartfelt telephone conversation or a direct, personal message, but rather reached them through indirect channels. That singular detail by itself communicates a profound message. Those within the inner circles of the institution suggest that Harry experienced a profound sense of being blindsided, interpreting the significant move as a deliberate act of distancing, rather than a mere neutral restructuring of operational procedures or personal boundaries. For Meghan, who has consistently expressed a long-standing feeling of exclusion and a deep sense of being misunderstood by the intricate royal system, this development served to powerfully reinforce her deeply held belief that the palace operates predominantly behind the scenes, often in ways that can feel both cold and unyielding. The shock and profound impact were not solely centered on the decision itself, but more significantly on what it profoundly symbolized. A brother consciously choosing to forge a future that appeared to leave no immediate room for reconciliation, at least for the foreseeable future. From William's deeply considered perspective, this choice was unequivocally never intended to be punitive in nature. Those individuals closest to him consistently affirm that he continues to care profoundly and deeply about Harry. However, he has undeniably reached a pivotal juncture where the establishment of clear emotional boundaries has become not just desirable, but absolutely necessary for his own well-being and future role. The relentless and constant glare of global media scrutiny, the public airing of deeply personal grievances, and the unpredictable, often damaging impact of revelations made public have collectively rendered him increasingly wary and cautious. Every single private conversation now carries the inherent and substantial risk of instantaneously transforming into widespread public discourse, and for a man meticulously preparing to ascend to the throne as king, that particular risk feels increasingly untenable and unsustainable. By quietly, yet firmly, reshaping the contours of his personal and professional world. William genuinely harbored the hope of regaining a fundamental sense of control and a much-needed measure of calm amidst the perpetual storm. Yet, despite William's intentions, silence possesses an extraordinary capacity to speak far more loudly and powerfully than any spoken words could ever achieve. The conspicuous absence of direct, personal communication between the brothers, coupled with the subtle yet discernible shifts meticulously noticed and analyzed by seasoned royal watchers and commentators, and the palpable, growing emotional distance that has manifested, have all collectively fueled an intense wave of speculation. Was this a temporary pause in their relationship, a brief intermission, or did it signify a permanent and irreversible change? Was William deliberately leaving the door to future dialogue ever so slightly ajar, or was he, with quiet resolve, gently but firmly closing it forever? These profound and unsettling questions continue to linger, entirely unanswered, adding an undeniable layer to the pervasive sense of drama and uncertainty that envelopes the entire situation. What remains unequivocally clear is that this specific move has indelibly marked a profound turning point in the relationship. It signals the commencement of a distinctly new phase in William's life, one where he overtly prioritizes an unclouded clarity over sentimental nostalgia and an unwavering stability over fleeting emotional sentiment. For Harry and Meghan, it serves as a stark and undeniable reminder that the venerable royal family continues its onward trajectory, with or without their direct involvement or participation. The profound shock they reportedly felt was not merely about the experience of being left out or excluded. It was about the deeply unsettling realization that the once robust and reliable brotherly bond, upon which they had both implicitly relied for so many years, may genuinely never again return to its former, comforting state. As the wider world watches intently from the outside, diligently interpreting every subtle gesture and meticulously reading between the lines of every public appearance, the true, immense emotional weight of William's deeply personal decision remains a burden known only to those closest to him and within his innermost circle. But one thing, above all others, is absolutely certain. This quiet, intensely private move has fundamentally and irreversibly reshaped the intricate dynamic of one of the most closely watched and scrutinized families on the entire planet. And while it may not have immediately dominated global headlines with dramatic force, its far-reaching impact is still very much unfolding, carrying with it a myriad of consequences that will undoubtedly be felt for many years, perhaps even decades, to come. As the days gradually passed into weeks, the emotional fallout stemming from William's significant decision began to manifest and take palpable shape in progressively quieter, yet ultimately more revealing ways. There were no public statements issued to the press, no dramatic rebuttals or passionate defenses. Instead, subtle, almost imperceptible signs began to emerge, collectively indicating that something fundamental and deeply entrenched had irrevocably shifted. Invitations that, in previous times, might have been readily extended to Harry and Meghan simply never materialized. Messages that, in the past, would have been answered promptly and personally, were now met with polite, yet distinct delays, or were strategically routed through a network of intermediaries, further emphasizing the growing distance. To casual outsiders, these seemingly minor details might appear utterly insignificant, but within the highly structured and nuanced royal circles, such subtle nuances carry an enormous and profound meaning. They constitute the silent language of distance, spoken with an almost frightening fluency by an ancient institution meticulously built upon centuries of ingrained restraint and unspoken protocols. For Harry, this slow, dawning realization proved to be deeply unsettling and profoundly disquieting. Despite the multitude of events and challenges that had unfolded and transpired over the many preceding years, there had always persisted an underlying assumption, perhaps even a deeply cherished hope, that the unyielding bond of blood would ultimately and inevitably outweigh any transient conflict or disagreement. He had, on numerous occasions, openly expressed his heartfelt desire for reconciliation, speaking passionately about his yearning for his children to genuinely know their British family, and articulating the profound pain he felt from being cut off from his very roots and heritage. Learning that William had taken such deliberate and decisive steps to redefine his inner world, effectively creating new, impenetrable boundaries, caused those fragile hopes to feel even more precarious and vulnerable. It suggested, with undeniable clarity, that the chasm between them was no longer merely emotional in nature, but had become undeniably structural, reinforced by a series of definitive decisions expressly designed to endure for a very long time, if not permanently. Meghan's reaction, as recounted by those intimately acquainted with the couple, unfolded with a profoundly complex emotional tapestry. On the one hand, a distinct sensation of validation resonated within her. From her unique vantage point, William's definitive action appeared to unequivocally confirm a long-held suspicion that the intricate royal system, with its ancient roots and rigid structures, invariably prioritizes an unyielding hierarchy and an overarching need for control above the more humanistic virtues of empathy and genuine openness. Yet, concurrently, there was also a pervasive undercurrent of profound disappointment. Despite the myriad challenges and formidable obstacles she had encountered since joining the royal family, Meghan had, at one time, sincerely envisioned a future wherein a foundation of mutual respect could still genuinely exist between them, even if their individual life paths were destined to diverge dramatically. The stark, quiet finality embedded within William's deliberate actions rendered that once cherished vision significantly more arduous to grasp and sustain. Meanwhile, within the private confines of William's own household, the prevailing atmosphere was characterized by an air of cautious, yet unwavering resolve. Catherine, widely admired and recognized for her remarkable ability to seamlessly balance genuine warmth with an impeccable sense of discretion, was reportedly a steadfast pillar of support for her husband's weighty choice. As a devoted mother, her paramount concern has perpetually revolved around the holistic well-being and emotional security of her 3 children. The preceding period of several years had regrettably exposed them to a greater degree of public scrutiny and palpable tension than any parent would ever wish upon their offspring, making the preservation of their precious sense of normalcy an absolutely paramount objective. For both William and Catherine, the deliberate act of meticulously crafting a stable, predictable, and nurturing environment for their family necessitated the minimization of any potential disruptions, even when those very disruptions emanated from within the closest familial circles. This specific juncture also heralded a discernible and significant alteration in how William approached his demanding public role. Observant commentators and seasoned royal watchers noted a newfound and undeniable firmness in his demeanor, a subtle yet powerfully unmistakable shift toward a more pronounced and confident assertion of authority. He appeared markedly more self-assured in his capacity to establish clear boundaries, less inclined to offer extensive explanations for his decisions or actions, and increasingly focused on the implementation of long-term strategic initiatives rather than merely engaging in reactive short-term gestures. It was as if the profound private decision he had made had, in essence, unlocked a clearer, more resolute sense of his overarching purpose. By decisively resolving these deeply personal internal conflicts, he effectively liberated a considerable reservoir of emotional energy, allowing him to concentrate with singular focus on the future he so carefully envisions for the enduring institution of the monarchy. Nevertheless, this newfound clarity, while empowering, came at a considerable and deeply personal cost. The poignant loss of an easy, unburdened brotherly connection weighed heavily upon William's spirit, even though he very rarely, if ever, acknowledged such sentiments publicly. Those who possess an intimate understanding of his character affirm that he is by no means immune to the pangs of regret or the depths of sadness, but rather, he processes these profound emotions with an intense privacy, far removed from the intrusive gaze of cameras and the speculative commentaries of the media. He understands with unwavering conviction that effective leadership frequently necessitates profound sacrifices that often go entirely unseen by the public eye, and in his considered judgment, this was one such profound sacrifice. The act of choosing the crown, even many years before the ceremonial weight of actually wearing it, inherently meant accepting that some deeply personal relationships might, regrettably, never fully heal or be restored to their former state. Across the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, in his new life, Harry grappled with a deeply familiar and recurring sense of isolation. Life in the sun-drenched climes of California certainly offered him an expansive sense of personal freedom, a wealth of creative opportunities, and a supportive circle of devoted friends. However, defining moments such as this one starkly underscored precisely how profoundly he had drifted from the intricate tapestry of his past. The shock engendered by William's decisive move was not merely about a feeling of exclusion. It was about the jarring confrontation with a stark reality where the prospect of genuine reconciliation was no longer a guaranteed outcome. For an individual who has so openly and courageously championed the critical importance of mental health awareness and the fundamental human need for authentic connection, this particular realization cut extraordinarily deep into his very being. Simultaneously, Harry and Meghan were acutely and painfully aware of the myriad ways in which any potential reaction from their quarter could be meticulously interpreted and widely disseminated. To respond with excessive strength or overt emotion, they knew, might inadvertently serve to reinforce existing narratives of intractable conflict and division. Conversely, to maintain a complete and utter silence could very well be misconstrued as an implicit acceptance or tacit endorsement of the situation. This extraordinarily delicate and precarious balance has, in fact, become an undeniable defining feature of their complex post-royal existence. Every single choice they contemplate feels inherently weighted with immense significance, and every period of silence is subjected to intense public scrutiny. William's latest decision merely added yet another intricate layer to this already formidable complexity, compelling them to meticulously reassess precisely how, and indeed if, they would choose to engage with the royal family moving forward into an uncertain future. Behind the venerable palace walls, senior figures within the royal household reportedly viewed William's decisive move as an ultimately inevitable progression. From their institutional perspective, the very bedrock of the monarchy's enduring strength and continued relevance thrives upon absolute clarity and an unbroken sense of continuity. Ambiguity, particularly when it involves high-profile members of the royal family, invariably poses a significant and inherent risk to the stability of the institution. By drawing these firmer, more unambiguous lines, William was thus perceived as actively strengthening the foundational integrity of the institution itself, rather than in any way weakening it. There was, certainly, an unspoken understanding that a measure of personal pain was intrinsically involved in such a profound decision, but this was invariably coupled with a powerful and unwavering belief that the annals of history would ultimately judge the decision kindly, especially if it successfully preserved a vital sense of stability during a period characterized by profound and incessant change. As the faint whispers of an unfolding situation began to tentatively circulate, the public reaction, entirely predictably, cleaved into distinct and often passionate factions. A significant portion of observers found themselves drawn to Harry, extending their profound sympathy and perceiving him as a younger brother, perhaps unfairly, left isolated and exposed in the metaphorical cold. Simultaneously, a robust contingent emerged to laud William, commending his unwavering commitment to duty and his resolute efforts in safeguarding the enduring future of the ancient monarchy. The sprawling digital landscape of social media platforms immediately ignited, buzzing with an incessant torrent of speculative theories, raw emotional reactions, and fervent debates that delved deeply into the intricate concepts of loyalty, the burden of responsibility, and the elusive nature of forgiveness. Yet, amidst this cacophony of public discourse and fervent opinion, the central figures themselves, the principles involved, maintained a profound and consistent silence, deliberately allowing the void of information to be comprehensively filled by an ever-growing tide of conjecture and imaginative interpretation. What imbued this particular juncture with such profound and amplified significance was its precise and critical timing. The venerable monarchy itself was in the midst of navigating a complex and delicate generational transition, simultaneously grappling with the imperative to rebuild public trust and adapt to an evolving landscape of societal expectations. In such a sensitive climate, Every internal shift, no matter how subtly executed, inevitably acquired an exponentially amplified importance. William's private and deliberate move, therefore, transcended the mere boundaries of familial dynamics. It served as a powerful and unmistakable signal of his readiness. A readiness to assume the weighty mantle of leadership, to make difficult and solitary decisions, and to unflinchingly accept the potentially far-reaching consequences that would inevitably flow from those choices. In taking this decisive step, he meticulously drew a line in the sand, a demarcation that possessed the profound potential to define the very character of his reign long before its official commencement. For Harry and Meghan, the intricate path stretching out before them continues to be shrouded in an undeniable uncertainty. The initial wave of shock that had undoubtedly washed over them has, with the inexorable passage of time, gradually receded, giving way to a more profound and sobering clarity. They are, with conscious effort, diligently constructing a life meticulously defined by their own deeply held values, a life deliberately independent of the traditional royal structures that once encompassed them. However, moments such as this one serve as potent and often painful reminders of the world and the connections that have been irrevocably left behind. Whether the passage of time will eventually soften William's steadfast stance or, conversely, serve only to deepen the existing divide between the brothers, remains an enigmatic question that only the unfolding future possesses the power to answer. As the intricate narrative of this familial and institutional recalibration continues its slow and deliberate unraveling, one fundamental truth emerges with striking clarity. This was emphatically not a dramatic, explosive break born of raw anger or direct confrontation. Instead, it represented a quiet, meticulously deliberate recalibration, a strategic adjustment carried out with profound intention and commendable restraint. And in a multitude of ways, that very subtlety imbues it with an even greater power, for sometimes the most profoundly shocking and transformative moves are not the loud, attention-demanding pronouncements, but rather the silent, almost imperceptible ones that possess the capacity to fundamentally alter everything without a single spoken word. Over the ensuing period, the profound weight of William's carefully considered decision began its gradual descent, settling into a discernible new normal, a reality that subtly but significantly reshaped expectations across all involved parties. What had initially felt profoundly shocking slowly but surely transformed into a steady, undeniable reality. The conspicuous absence of overt conflict or public discord rendered the decision exceedingly difficult to challenge openly, and the deliberate lack of an official explanation left little room for anything other than a quiet, internal acceptance within the broader royal family. Routines, both public and private, subtly adjusted to the new parameters. Essential events moved forward with an unperturbed continuity. The venerable institution, in a display of its inherent resilience, performed precisely what it has historically done best. It adapted quietly, efficiently, and with remarkable composure to a new and distinctive set of circumstances. For William, this particular phase ushered in a profound sense of internal alignment and resolute purpose. The private move he had so carefully orchestrated was no longer merely a protective measure designed to shield his family and the institution. It seamlessly transformed into a foundational principle for how he would henceforth approach his leadership responsibilities, his familial relationships, and his public life. He appeared to grow increasingly comfortable with the nuanced understanding that not every unfolding story necessitates an immediate or public response, and that not every fractured relationship can be salvaged through sheer effort alone. In his meticulously ordered world, the immense weight of responsibility now unmistakably outweighed the yearning for reconciliation, not because the bonds of love had somehow vanished, but rather because he held a deep-seated conviction that the greater good, the welfare of the institution he was destined to lead, unequivocally demanded clarity and unwavering resolve. This deeply held belief profoundly shaped his subsequent actions, meticulously defined his priorities, and rigorously informed the boundaries he steadfastly maintained. During this period of quiet transformation, Catherine's role became even more undeniably significant and pivotal. She continued, with remarkable grace and consistency, to project an image of warmth and steadfast stability in her public appearances, offering a reassuring and anchoring presence that stood in stark, yet elegant, contrast to the palpable underlying family tension. Those individuals fortunate enough to be close to her attest to her profound understanding of both sides of the complex divide, acknowledging her genuine compassion for Harry, while simultaneously standing with unshakable loyalty and firmness beside her husband. Her primary focus remained steadfastly on cultivating and nurturing a profound sense of unity within her own immediate household, diligently shielding her 3 children from the intricate emotional complexities that inevitably accompany being an integral part of such a globally famous and scrutinized family. In performing this delicate balancing act, she played an indispensable role in solidifying and protecting the very life and future that William was so determined to safeguard. For Harry, the emotional journey he embarked upon took a decidedly different and deeply personal shape. The initial jarring shock gradually evolved into a period of profound and intense reflection, and that reflection, in turn, matured into a quieter, more profound form of acceptance. He has always carried within him a deep and abiding connection to his past, a tapestry woven with shared memories and experiences, and moments such as this one compelled him to confront the stark and often painful permanence of change. The realization that his brother was purposefully moving forward, charting a course without him, was undoubtedly painful, yet it simultaneously clarified something of immense importance. His own future would not, and could not, be defined by passive waiting. Instead, it would be actively shaped by the vibrant new family he had lovingly created and the distinct set of values he had consciously chosen to live by. Megan, with her innate and remarkable perceptiveness to the subtle emotional undercurrents that often ripple beneath the surface of even the most composed interactions, actively encouraged a steadfast forward focus. While she undeniably felt the sharp, unwelcome sting of exclusion, a sensation that could easily lead to resentment or regret, she simultaneously possessed the profound clarity to recognize the significant opportunity this very situation unexpectedly presented. With an undeniable reduction in the multitude of emotional ties that had previously pulled them back, often binding them to expectations and traditions, she and Harry found themselves liberated to fully and unreservedly invest their energies into forging and navigating their wholly independent path. Their burgeoning projects, their dedicated advocacy work, and their increasingly resonant public voices thus transformed into authentic and powerful expressions of a life no longer inextricably tethered to, or constrained by, the need for royal approval. Prince William's decisive, private move, though undoubtedly a source of considerable personal pain and upheaval for all involved, ultimately served to profoundly solidify that burgeoning separation, rendering it far less ambiguous and considerably more definitive in its implications. And yet, despite the undeniable clarity established by this shift, the unfolding narrative did not conclude with a neat, satisfying sense of complete closure or an absolute resolution. There persisted numerous moments, often exquisitely small and deeply human in their nature, that subtly hinted at a lingering, undeniable connection. These might manifest as a fleeting, shared glance exchanged across a crowded public event, a meticulously chosen phrase carefully embedded within a formal speech, or even a respectful, poignant silence observed during moments of significant milestones. These gestures, delicate and understated as they invariably were, powerfully suggested that while clear, unyielding boundaries had indeed been meticulously drawn and firmly established, the deep reservoir of emotion that had long existed between them had not, by any means, been entirely erased. The intricate bond between the two brothers, forged in the carefree innocence of childhood and subsequently tested with immense pressure and complexity throughout the crucible of adulthood, remained stubbornly complicated rather than being definitively and completely severed. Public fascination with this evolving and deeply personal situation only intensified and grew more fervent as the years incrementally passed. A veritable army of commentators meticulously analyzed every nuance of body language, painstakingly dissected even the most innocuous statements, and tirelessly searched for any discernible signs of a potential thaw in the relationship or, conversely, a further deepening of the frost. Each and every public appearance by either William or Harry was invariably viewed through the inescapable lens of their fractured relationship, an interpretative framework applied whether they consciously acknowledged it or not. Yet, both men seemed to grow increasingly determined to consciously live beyond the confines of that pervasive narrative. William, with a clear sense of purpose, focused his considerable energies on meticulously shaping a modern monarchy, one firmly rooted in the fundamental principles of dedicated service and unwavering stability. Harry, in parallel, concentrated his efforts on profoundly redefining his own life and identity entirely outside the established royal confines, seeking a new sense of purpose and autonomy. What truly rendered Prince William's private move so profoundly impactful was not merely its immediate, perceptible effect, which was significant in itself, but rather its far-reaching and enduring long-term implications. It unequivocally set a powerful precedent for how he intends to navigate and handle future conflicts, with a quiet, measured resolve, with unyielding decisiveness, and always with a keen, strategic eye fixed firmly upon the future rather than lingering regretfully on the past. This deliberate and characteristic approach may very well come to define the entirety of his eventual reign, signaling the emergence of a monarch who places paramount value on unwavering structure over fleeting sentiment, and absolute clarity over the potential ambiguities of compromise. For some observers, this will undoubtedly prove to be a reassuring and stabilizing posture, offering a sense of predictability and strength. For others, however, it may inevitably feel somewhat distant and perhaps even cold. But irrespective of individual perceptions, this approach leaves absolutely little to no doubt about precisely where he stands on matters of principle and governance. For Harry and Meghan, the initial shock, a seismic jolt to their established world, has gradually become an integral and undeniable part of their ongoing story, adding yet another compelling chapter to a remarkable journey already marked by a series of bold, often unconventional choices and their sometimes unexpected, far-reaching consequences. They have, through lived experience, learned the profound and often bittersweet lesson that distance, while undeniably bringing its own measure of pain and sorrow, can also paradoxically bestow a newfound sense of freedom and liberation. They have also come to understand that true closure, that elusive state of resolution, does not always arrive neatly packaged with complete understanding or mutual reconciliation. Sometimes, it simply manifests as the quiet, relentless passage of time, as life, with its inexorable momentum, simply moves on. In that profound sense, William's impactful decision inadvertently forced everyone involved to embark upon a path of significant personal growth, whether they consciously desired such transformation or not. As the years continue their relentless march forward, this pivotal moment may ultimately be remembered not as a dramatic and destructive rupture, but rather as a quiet, yet incredibly significant, turning point. A precise moment when individual paths diverged with clear intention and purpose, rather than through chaotic happenstance. It was a time when a future king made the conscious choice to define his world and his role within it with exacting precision, and when a younger brother, with a mixture of acceptance and perhaps a touch of melancholy, came to terms with the undeniable reality that his place within that established world had irrevocably changed. History, in its grand sweeping narratives, often tends to focus on monumental grand gestures and resounding public declarations. But often, it is behind the scenes, within the silent, private decisions made in moments of profound contemplation, that destinies are truly and enduringly shaped. In the final reckoning, Prince William's private and deeply consequential move accomplished far more than merely shocking Harry and Meghan. It served to clarify a future that had, for an extended period, remained shrouded in uncertainty and ambiguity. It unequivocally closed some doors, sealing off certain possibilities and pathways, while simultaneously, and perhaps unexpectedly, opening others, leading to new horizons. It drew distinct and clear lines that, though they may one day be softened by the gentle hand of time or the healing balm of forgiveness, will almost certainly never be completely forgotten. And as the compelling royal story continues its unfolding trajectory, this quiet, Yet incredibly impactful choice will undoubtedly remain a powerful and enduring reminder that sometimes the most profound and transformative changes in life occur, not in the glaring spotlight of cameras and public scrutiny, but rather in the silent, often solitary spaces where personal duty and the complex tapestry of human emotion inevitably collide.